Yeah, it's like he's going for the old boundaries or something. I mean, who's he think he is, Alexander? Okay. July 20th, 1940. Adolf Hitler has defeated all his enemies in the field, except one. He is now only at war with Britain and the British Commonwealth. To defeat them, though, he will need a plan, and this week, that plan is here. I'm Indy Neidell. This is World War II. Last week, there was a naval battle off Calabria. The Luftwaffe bombed Britain, and Philippe Pétain consolidated power in Vichy, France. Here is what followed. On July 16th, Adolf Hitler submits his directive for the invasion of Britain. This is Directive Number 16. He prefaces the order by stating, as England, in spite of her hopeless military situation, still shows no signs of willingness to come to terms, I have decided to prepare, and if necessary to carry out, a landing operation against her. The aim of this operation is to eliminate the English motherland as a base from which the war against Germany can be continued, and, if necessary, to occupy the country completely. The code name for the invasion is Seelöwe, Sea Lion. An air offensive is to begin August 5th. The invasion itself is to be on a broad front, from the east around Ramsgate all the way to beyond the Isle of Wight in the west. But no concrete date is set for the troop landings. That is because there are conditions to meet before such a landing will happen. The Royal Air Force is to be defeated and demoralized by the Luftwaffe to the point that it won't be able to oppose a German channel crossing. The channel itself is to be swept of British mines and the Strait of Dover blocked by German mines. German artillery must dominate the whole coastal region between France and Britain. The Royal Navy must not be able to interfere in the crossing, so they have to be engaged in the North Sea and the Mediterranean by the Kriegsmarine. The home fleet must be either destroyed or badly damaged by torpedo and air attacks. So, the success, or failure, of Sea Lion rests on Grand Admiral Erich Raeder and Luftwaffe Supreme Commander Hermann Göring, neither of whom have the slightest interest or enthusiasm for such an attack, and both of whom do little to hide their opposition to it. Nor does Directive 16 provide for combined operational headquarters of any kind. Raeder even writes a memo on the 19th which states the Navy will be unable to accomplish its objectives. Göring does not like the idea of using his Luftwaffe for naval warfare, and this also means cooperating with the Kriegsmarine. Göring, though, can't stand Raeder, so cooperation may not be that easy. And the Luftwaffe's directives are that attacks on shipping or warships take a backseat to military targets. Okay, well, they don't use the word backseat, but that's what they mean, right? Göring's plan is to attack the RAF and gain air supremacy. His own directive from back on June 30th said, as long as the enemy air force is not destroyed, it is the basic principle of the conduct of air war to attack the enemy air units at every possible favorable opportunity, by day and night, in the air and on the ground, without regard for other missions. His thinking was that after this, they wouldn't need to invade because British Prime Minister Winston Churchill and company would be forced to sign peace. But last week on the 11th, Hans Jeschonnek, Chief of Staff of the Luftwaffe, gave his order for coastal shipping to be targeted. Such targets are easier to find than inland ones, which is a plus, but also, when it defends, the RAF will then be fighting over a region where pretty much all of the German forces can take part in the fight. Another plus. And another one. The Germans have an air-sea rescue service. The RAF do not. This month, the Luftwaffe has been transferring air units to the European coast from Hamburg to Brest. By July 17th, they have reached their intended strength for operations against southern England and the Midlands, with 1,200 medium bombers, 280 dive bombers, 760 single-engine fighters, 220 twin-engine fighters, 50 long-range reconnaissance aircraft, and 90 short-range recon ones. Luftflotte 5 in Norway, with 130 medium bombers, 30 twin-engine fighters, and 30 long-range reconnaissance aircraft, will have an indirect influence on the Channel action because it will force the British to keep units in the north. And the German planes are effective this week. When 9 British Bolton-Paul Defiants go into action the 19th, German Messerschmitt Bf-109s shoot down 6 of them. But what about peace between Germany and Britain? Can that happen? Martin Gilbert writes that on the 19th, Hitler expounds on Churchill's rejection of peace in a Berlin speech. If the struggle continues, it can only end in annihilation for one of us. Mr. Churchill thinks it will be Germany. I know it will be Britain. I am not the vanquished begging for mercy. I speak as a victor. I can see no reason why this war must go on. We should like to avert the sacrifices that claim millions. Mr. Churchill may one day brush aside this statement of mine by saying that it is merely born of fear and doubts of victory. In this case, I shall have relieved my conscience of the things to come. It isn't just Churchill, though. American President Franklin Roosevelt is also dismissive of Hitler's offer, saying there is only one way to deal with a totalitarian country, by resistance, not appeasement. He signs the Two-Ocean Navy Expansion Act to increase American naval strength in both the Atlantic and Pacific. The U.S. has, at the moment, 358 warships in service and is building 130. This act provides for 7 more battleships, 18 aircraft carriers, 27 cruisers, 42 submarines, and 115 destroyers. Although only Britain was now at war with Germany, a sense of global conflict pervaded the nations of the Western world. The closing of the Burma Road and the Two-Ocean Navy Expansion Act were clear signs of this. The British want to bring the war back to mainland Europe, even if only on a small scale. On July 1st, Churchill's cabinet agrees to a proposal to combine Section D, the sabotage and propaganda arm of the Secret Intelligence Service, with a guerrilla research department into an organization to run sabotage and other subversive activity in Germany, German-controlled, or even neutral nations. This is the SOE, the Special Operations Executive, which officially forms the 20th. Its motto and its mission are soon coined by Churchill when he tells its first boss, Hugh Dalton, "Set Europe ablaze." Also on the 14th, British commandos launch Operation Ambassador against German-occupied Guernsey. 469 Germans are stationed there. The operation does a few demolitions, but one commando drowns and 2 are taken prisoner, and Churchill calls it a fiasco. The British do have a victory at sea this week, the 19th, as British and Australian ships defeat the Italians at the Battle of Cape Spada, sinking an Italian light cruiser, though a day earlier, the Vichy French Air Force bombs British Gibraltar in response for the British attack on the French fleet at Mers el-Kabir a couple weeks ago. And a naval note I didn't mention last week. The German commerce raider Comet made its way into the North Pacific by an unusual route, the Northeast Passage along the Arctic Ocean and the seas north of Norway, Finland, and the Soviet Union. There is something else going on this week concerning the Soviet Union. This week are the elections in the Baltics, and yes, I mean those quotes. Last month, the Soviet Union occupied Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, sending hundreds of thousands of Red Army troops across the borders. And now, after the legitimate governments of those countries have been toppled, people's parliaments are created by elections the 14th and 15th. The electoral laws of those nations, however, have been amended illegally and worded in such a way that only communists or their allies are allowed to run for office. The election results are fabricated anyhow, and apparently appear in foreign newspapers 24 hours before the polls even close. Tomorrow, 21st, these people's parliaments will meet, and they will have but one item on their agendas, a motion to join the Soviet Union. The motions will carry unanimously. The official Soviet Union story will be that the 3 nations carried out socialist revolutions and made voluntary requests to join the USSR. And here are some notes to end the week. In the U.S., during the Democratic Party National Convention in Chicago, July 15th through 18th, Franklin Roosevelt is nominated for president for the 3rd time against very little opposition. Henry Wallace is his running mate. And in Britain, General Alan Brooke replaces Edmund Ironside as commander of the Home Forces. He will now be in charge of anti-invasion preparations. And on the 19th in Berlin, Adolf Hitler promotes 12 generals to the rank of Generalfeldmarschall, Field Marshal. Hermann Goering is promoted to a rank created just for him, Reichsmarschall. And the week comes to an end, with a German directive to invade Britain, a British department to wage subversive war on the continent, and new governments in Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. It's interesting to see some of the spin on events of this war, and I don't mean just back then with like like the Soviet version of what happened in the Baltic states. I mean stuff people write in now about those events, mostly because I suspect they think of their guys as the good guys, and good guys don't do bad things. For example, several British people wrote in about the British invasion of Iceland that no, it wasn't an invasion, it was just an occupation, as if there's a difference when you send in military forces to seize the infrastructure of a neutral nation and take its territory for your own use. Someone also wrote in that no, the Soviets didn't want to take over Finland. They just sent in their army because they wanted to put in a new government and make sure it was accepted, which is taking over a country. I imagine that person might be thinking now that the Soviets are not taking over the Baltics, just sending in their army to install new governments. But whatever your side is, this is war. And in wars, sometimes good guys do bad things, and bad guys do good things. And Britain invaded Iceland, and the Soviet Union invaded Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Though it didn't work out for them in Finland. If you missed our week-by-week coverage of the Winter War between Finland and the Soviet Union, you can click right here for the episode When It Began. Our patron of the week is Edward Klima. It is our Patreon supporters like Edward, the Time Ghost Army, that make this show possible. So please support us at patreon.com or timeghost.tv. Do not forget to subscribe, ring that little bell. We'll see you next time.